Hey everyone, welcome back to CCF1. You cannot spell Spain without pain, and oh boy was that a painful one to watch. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to CCF1 for another race review where we put all the races in the 2020 calendar up against each other to see which one's the best and which one's the worst. Today we're reviewing the Spanish Grand Prix, which I would say teased us. I'm talking about the rain and a potential safety car, but we're going to talk about that. Cass, what were your thoughts of what we received today?
My expectations were so low, and somehow I still ended up disappointed. This track is not suited for the modern F1 cars. There are little to no proper overtaking spaces. The drivers are almost too familiar with the track at this point. It's just a horrible track, and I genuinely think it has no right being part of this updated calendar.
Let's get into the race now. You're just looking forward to the start because that's when positions are pretty much decided since it is so hard to overtake. And what can I say about that start but...
pitiful.
The only thing that really shined out of it was Stroll moving up into third place, and I was hopeful. I'm like, maybe he's gonna keep it the whole race.
I mean, I basically knew as soon as the commentators said, Hamilton gets away well, this race was over. Your number one opportunity to gain control of the race is after the first turn. If you lead into turn one, you are pretty much going to win the race unless something catastrophic happens.
I was expecting this to be another one of those tire malfunctioning kind of races because it's so much hotter there now when they're usually there in May, I think. That wasn't the case. Everyone was already set to be on a two-stopper. And those that did do a one-stop turned out not to be in such a bad shape after all. My main focus of battles in this race in the first half was between the Ferraris and the AlphaTauris. Leclerc on Gasly, and then Vettel against Kvyat.
Yeah, other than that, there was an interesting little shuffle. Ocon, Albon, and Sainz overtaking Magnussen within the same lap, which honestly I just felt bad for the guy, but he clearly needed a pit stop. Speaking of pit stops though, Red Bull, wow. 1.9 seconds for Max. Honestly, saved him a lot of trouble because he was able to get out ahead of the two racing points, which I think was one of the catalysts for helping him stay that far up. Yeah.
You had Albon, the first one, to go on a hard tire. Turned out to be a pretty bad decision. You also have Kimi, who's finally beaten the record for the most distance traveled in a Formula One car.
Round of applause, everybody.
And a pretty good week for Alfa Romeo for at least Raikkonen's sake.
There was one little battle between the two racing points that had me a little tense, but eventually Stroll just came back out on top, so that ended pretty quickly. My blood pressure lowered back to normal once again.
It did seem like they were going back and forth just between the two, so it was kind of like a race on their own.
It's always just a little bit disappointing with the racing points, even when they do have a good weekend like this one, because I want to see them just get a little bit closer. Because even when they're in 4th, 5th place and you think to yourself, what do you mean? That's a great result for them. They're still so far back.
That's pretty much going to cover the first 33 laps of the Spanish Grand Prix. On my side, my excitement was mostly around a 3, just for that opening lap. I'd have to say most of the drama, which I scored a 4, came from the traffic and just sort of figuring out where they're going to be placed. And in terms of racing, I thought I did see a bit more racing than I was used to in the Spanish Grand Prix for the first half. So I gave that just an average 5.
Oh boy, was I harsh in comparison. Excitement was a 2. You knew after the very first corner who the winner of this race was going to be, and I always just find that extremely discouraging from the very start. Drama, I put out a 1. You knew as soon as someone was coming out from the pits, there was going to be traffic. Because why? There's always traffic at this track. And then racing, I put at like a 3. This track isn't very good for overtakes, and I just didn't see that many of them. So that averages out my score to a 2.
Mine was a 4.
Combined for the first half of the race at a 3.
So we get to about the halfway mark in the Spanish Grand Prix, and the next thing you know, you hear drivers saying, I see some dark clouds off of turn 4, and I'm like, the rain, I didn't know that could come. And it almost, I'd say, just teased us, because then you get Vettel's team telling him, hey, it's going to come around lap 50, so I'm like, okay, at least 16 laps, something could shake up, and this could be great. Nope. They kept showing the exact same satellite shot on the TV, and it let go and sort of ruined all the hopes of that.
It's like Hungary, all over again. Hope of rain, and it never comes. That was discouraging, to say the least. You know what else was discouraging?
What's that?
Leclerc! I think I jinxed him after last race review where I said somehow he manages to pull off a good result. Because, yeah, that Ferrari engine sure did say, hasta la vista, I'm out of here. Yeah, electrical issue in the middle of a turn, and then it just gave up on him. Kind of half spun. Wasn't sure if he was going to be able to get it started, which raised my hopes because I wanted a safety car.
Line everyone back up.
I was like, damn it, Leclerc, just stay parked on the track. Get us a safety car out here. Let's bring the field back together and hopefully get some shakeups. But no, he got it started and somehow his seatbelt disconnected and brought it back to the pits. And I'm like, no.
Any other really highlights from the second half of this race?
Blue flag.
I mean, yeah, that was a theme that came up for two drivers, both Perez and Kvyat, where I guess they didn't have enough time to let people go by.
But then you would look at the playback and, I don't know, to me it just kind of seemed like there wasn't really an opportunity to let them by beforehand. So I guess if they're going to give one of them a penalty, they kind of have to give it to both of them.
Otherwise, you did get to see a lot of Vettel now sort of fighting with his strategist team, where he's like, can I have a strategy now? Can you do a one-stop? And he's like, well, I already asked you previously, are we doing a one-stop? How come it seems like everyone is confused? And luckily for him, he did pull it off and get driver of the day, which was nice to see.
Charles is out of the race. That's a really big shame. You still have a driver in the race. Pay attention to him. And the fact that his strategy was just all over the place, them telling him, you're on the softs, go full send. Try to catch the people in front of you, forget tire management. And then 3 laps later, after he's just worn down his tires, he gets asked, hey, so do you think we can make a one-stop work? What the hell?
The only other cool shot that we got from this race was Grosjean drifting his F1 car. And even if at that point he lost it, the safety car wouldn't have done anything. So I'm happy to see that he knows how to drift.
Skirt, skirt.
So other than people being kept up in traffic, everyone relatively keeping their positions, second half of the race, how did we rate it?
My excitement, I put at a 1 because I was bored out of my mind. And I knew that nothing was going to change. No one was going to get relatively close to Hamilton. Midfield, by this point, the only one I was watching was Vettel and anything surrounding him because of his one-stop strategy. But everything else, people relatively kept their positions. Drama, I put at a 3, entirely because of Charles. And then racing, I put it at 2. Once again, Vettel carried this entire race.
On the contrary, on my side, I did have an excitement score of 2 for the sole purpose of the weather. I was still under the impression it was coming in a few laps' time, and I'm like, here it comes. The clouds are getting closer and darker. So for me, there was no drama at that point, so I roughly gave it a 1. And then in terms of the racing, I gave it a 3, just because it was the same as previously, I guess less frequent.
So that puts the 2020 Spanish Grand Prix at a score of 2.5, making it the lowest and worst race of the season thus far. I really hope that this is as bad as it gets. I don't want to see anything worse than this.
Be sure to subscribe to this channel right now. Video playlists of the other race reviews that are of races better than this one are right here.
Make sure to follow us on social media. As always, I do all the live tweeting. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time in Belgium, one of my favorite tracks.